Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rechak Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Isaiah, the 37th chapter. As we read in the 36th chapter, we had the account of Sennacherib sending Rabshakeh, right, one of his high-ranking officials, with a message for Israel, or in this case, Judah, telling them and trying to discourage them from trusting in the Lord, and basically for them to succumb, fear, and bow down to the Assyrians, right, considering they had rebelled. And so, as we see through that chapter, with the distressing words that Rabshakeh leaves, Eliakim, right, and those that were with him now come to deliver the response back to Hezekiah. So here we are in Isaiah the 37th chapter. Now, Isaiah 37, it's like a very similar, like almost like a parallel chapter to 2 Kings 19. And so I implore you, if you haven't watched it, go and watch. I went through 2 Kings 19 already. And so considering it's the same chapter, that video would likely have the more details of, the extra parts of this. But then nevertheless, in Isaiah 37:1, being that it's the same account, it says here, "And it came to pass when King Hezekiah heard it," when he heard the report that was delivered by Eliakim and the rest, "that he rent his clothes," right, meaning he tore them up, he ripped it, "and covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of the Lord Yahweh," right, because that covering yourself with sackcloth was a form of mourning. So Hezekiah was very distressed hearing this news. And he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and the elders of the priests, covered with sackcloth, unto Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos. And they said unto him, "Thus saith Hezekiah, this day is a day of trouble, and of rebuke, and of blasphemy." And reason being, right, that's pretty much what Rabshakeh did, right, speaking reproachfully against Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, that he wouldn't be able to deliver Israel out of the hand of Sennacherib. "For the children are come to the birth, and there is no strength to bring forth." And so the message here is to highlight how stressful the situation is. The example is given like a woman who is in labor, and the child comes to, they're able to get the child right to the birth canal, but they're not able to push to bring the child forth. So they're sort of stuck in a position like that, which is a very stressful situation. So it may have been like a saying, right? One of the sayings that they had back then to highlight, difficulty or stress. Verse 4, "It may be the Lord Yahweh thy God will hear the words of Rabshakeh, whom the king of Assyria his master hath sent to reproach the living God, and will reprove the words which the Lord Yahweh thy God hath heard. Wherefore lift up thy prayer for the remnant that is left." So Hezekiah sends these messengers, right, Eliakim and the rest, to Isaiah to say, hey, please, like, ask the Lord, beseech the Lord to basically judge, and bring this judgment against these Assyrians, right? Look at what they said, look at what they did, and what they're threatening. Verse 5, "So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah, and Isaiah said unto them, Thus shall ye say unto your master, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Be not afraid of the words that thou hast heard, wherewith the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me." So don't worry about what they're saying. "Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor, and return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land." Right? So the Lord is going to use some event or some situation here to cause Sennacherib and his Assyrian army to retreat and to return back to Assyria. And when they were to return, the Lord was going to pursue him even further, right, and have him be killed, as it says, by the sword in his own land, which, as we know in secular history, ended up happening. In fact, his own sons put him to death as he was praying in the temple of one of his gods. So Rabshakeh returned and found the king of Assyria warring against Libnah. So remember, the Assyrian king ends up sending Rabshakeh to go and send this message to Israel. He's continuing his campaign in the region. Rabshakeh delivers this message, and then he comes back to Sennacherib. Verse 9, and he heard say concerning Tirhakah, king of Ethiopia, he is come forth to make war with thee. And when he heard it, he sent messengers to Hilkiah. So as Sennacherib is warring, he's now hearing, oh, the Ethiopian king is actually trying to make war with you. So now he's about to go do some more warring and taking over. But before leaving, he sends another message. Right? He says, all right, this is another message. Send this to Hezekiah, and this is what you're going to say. Thus shall ye speak to Hezekiah, king of Judah, saying, let not thy God, in whom thou trustest, deceive thee, saying, Jerusalem shall not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Behold, thou hast heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all the lands by utterly destroying them, and shalt thou be delivered? So look at our history, look at our track record. And you think, of all these nations we've conquered with even larger armies than yours, that you're going to somehow be the special one? Have the gods of the nations delivered them, which my fathers have destroyed? As Gozan and Haran, and Rezeph, and the children of Eden, which were in Telassar. Right, so looking at all these heathen nations, they had their gods, they had their idols. Which one of them gods was able to deliver them? Where is the king of Hamath, and the king of Arpad, and the king of the city of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Ivah? And Hezekiah received the letter from the hand of the messengers, and read it. And Hezekiah went up onto the house of the Lord Yahweh, and spread it before the Lord. So he basically went to the temple, and he laid out that message there. Say, Lord, look at what they're saying. And Hezekiah prayed unto the Lord Yahweh, saying, O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, that dwellest between the cherubims, thou art the God, even thou alone. Of all the kingdoms of the earth, thou hast made heaven and earth. Incline thine ear, O Lord, and hear. Open thine eyes, O Yahweh, and see, and hear all the words of Sennacherib, which hath sent to reproach the living God. So Hezekiah is beseeching the Lord, right? He's praying unto the Lord. He's saying, Lord, look at the position we're in, right? And you got this heathen over here, and he's talking ever so proudly against you, right? Not only is he threatening to level us, he's basically saying he's going to do it, and you're not going to do anything about it, likening you unto these other gods or these idols, which are no gods. Of a truth, Yahweh, the king of Assyria, the kings of Assyria have laid waste all nations and their countries, right? So, I mean, he's not lying, right? When he says that they've conquered other nations, that's true, and have cast their gods into the fire, for they were no gods, but the work of men's hands. So all the gods of those other nations, they were destroyed, they were burned up, because at the end of the day, they were just carvings, right? And creations that were put together skillfully by men, right? Made of wood and stone, as it says here. Therefore they have destroyed them, right? Because they actually weren't any gods. They weren't going to be able to have the power to do anything. Now therefore, O Yahweh our God, save us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that thou art the Lord Yahweh, even thou only. So not only is he begging for mercy from the Lord, but also that the Lord should show his power, right? And get his reverence for being the one true living God, because these heathens over here, they seem to have forgotten what the Lord did back in Egypt. Then Isaiah the son of Amos sent unto Hezekiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh God of Israel, whereas thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib king of Assyria. So after Hezekiah prayed, the Lord heard it and then sent. That's why the prophets are known as the messengers, right? So he then conveyed the message that to Isaiah, whether in a vision, in a dream, however, and then had Isaiah deliver that to Hezekiah. This is the word which the Lord Yahweh hath spoken concerning him. Concerning who? The king of Assyria. The virgin, the daughter of Zion, which is Israel, hath despised thee, and laughed thee to scorn. The daughter of Jerusalem hath shaken her head at thee. Right? Which is to say, they're looking at you like this guy doesn't even know what he's getting himself into. Right? It's almost laughable that you are reproaching our God, speaking as though you actually have the power to do something. Now, remember, these are the words of the Lord. Okay, and then there's a couple of different perspectives that are shown in this message. Okay, so starting from the perspective of Israel, as it's saying here, your remarks are laughable compared to the God that we worship. Whom hast thou reproached and blasphemed? And against whom hast thou exalted thy voice and lifted up thine eyes on high? Even against the Holy One of Israel. So who do you, once again, like you have no clue who it is that you barking up the wrong tree, pretty much. By thy servants hast thou reproached the Lord, and hast said, By the multitude of my chariots am I come up to the height of the mountains, to the sides of Lebanon, and I will cut down the tall cedars thereof, and the choice fair trees thereof, and I will enter into the height of his border, and the forest of his Carmel. Okay, so basically, in the mind of these Assyrians, they believe, they trust in their carnal, weapons, their chariots and so on, thinking that it's by that power and that might that they're able to take over all these various lands, including even Lebanon. Okay, and as you can see, they were warring in the region, right, making their campaign throughout that region and subjecting the nations there to them. Verse 25, I have digged and drunk water, and with the sole of my feet I have dried up all the rivers of the besieged places. So this is now basically the Lord is saying this is the mindset that this Assyrian king has, right? He's boasting in the fact that he's been able to conquer these nations. The digging and drinking waters is basically like to dig up a well, right? And that's in reference to the nations that they besieged, right? That they eventually took over. Okay, because once again, during a siege, it's a long period of time, even for those besieging the enemies. So you got to have resources, all right? And in certain areas, you would be able to either reroute the main passage of water, because some cities didn't have water bodies directly built in them. So they would route maybe a stream or nearby river into the city, and some would dig wells in order to get basically water. So he's saying here, right, like I've dug, in other words, many wells, right? I've dried up the rivers of the besieged places, which is to say, like us as Assyrians have conquered so much. Hast thou not heard long ago how I have done it, and of ancient times how I have formed it? So now the Lord is saying, you saying this, you saying that, you saying this, that, and the third. Did you forget that all of that is by my will? From the ancient times, from the very creation of things, I'm the one who's laid all this down. It says, now have I brought it to pass, right? So the Lord is saying, this is all my plan. This is all my conception. Okay, I conceived these plans, and now I have brought it to pass. That thou shouldest be to lay waste defend cities into ruinous heaps. So it's because of the plan I set in motion that you're able to do all these things. It's not because you're some hot shot or some top dog. Therefore their inhabitants were of small power. They were dismayed and confounded. So the reason that the enemies you went against were weak against you was because that was a part of the plan that I set up. They were as the grass of the field and as the green herb, as the grass on the housetops, as corn blasted before before it be grown up. And that's likening the how vulnerable or how defenseless these nations were when it came to the Assyrians. Because when you read about the history of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, they did a lot of conquering. Okay, ruthlessly too. But I know thy abode, and thy going out, and thy coming in, and thy rage against me. So the Lord is saying, look, when it comes to you, I know I set you up. I know where you at, where you're going, where you're coming from, and all the disrespect and reproach that you speak against me. And it's interesting because I set you up to do that. Verse 29, because thy rage against me and thy tumult is come up into mine ears, therefore will I put my hook in thy nose and my bridle in thy lips, and I will turn thee back by the way by which thou camest. So the Lord is saying, as a result of all this, all this madness, this proud, lofty speak, I'm going to turn you back, right? Like putting a hook or a bridle in your lips, right? Which is something that's done to horses to control them. And I'm going to route you or direct you back to wherever you came from, your homeland, which is Assyria. And this shall be a sign unto thee. So once again, this is Isaiah sending a message to Hezekiah saying this was the reply of the Lord. Okay. So within that reply, as the Lord says, now the sign that I'm going to give you, right? This is going to be a sign unto you. Ye shall eat this year such as groweth of itself, and the second year that which springeth of the same. And in the third year, sow ye and reap, and plant vineyards, and eat the fruit thereof. And what is that to signify? That's to signify that they would be delivered from the situation they're in. Because in the siege, right, when you're besieged, you don't have the luxury, because they cut off your water, they cut off your food. So when nations are under siege, the food that they the victuals that they rely on are things that they've stockpiled, because it's hard to grow new crops, because you can't, if you're within the confines of the city, where's the water coming from, right? Or maybe your farmlands are not really in the city itself. It's a little further out. But here the Lord is saying you're going to be able to do that, right? Eat this year of that which groweth of itself, meaning you're going to be able to have that free living, to be able to, do your agricultural things, right? Plant and harvest and all of that without fear of these Assyrians on your back. And the remnant that is escaped of the house of Judah shall again take root downward and bear fruit upward, right? Meaning that, those that are escaped, they're gonna be likened onto one that is planted, right? They're planted because when you take root downward, you're planted and your roots are growing, and then you bear the fruit upward, right? Which is to flourish. And in this time, it was once again the remnant at the time, which was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And you also had a few of the northern kingdom sprinkled amongst them. But it's also a foreshadowing of the elect, right? Which are the true or ultimate remnant that are going to escape. And they wouldn't be of only the house of Judah, right? That remnant in prophecy would be of all 12 tribes. Okay. And you notice that oftentimes the Lord uses symbolism, right? He'll have a prophet say something about a certain situation, and later on, he'll use that symbolic time or what was said or prophesied and manifest it on a grander scale. Verse 32, for out of Jerusalem shall go forth a remnant, and they that escape out of Mount Zion. The zeal of the Lord Yahweh of hosts shall do this. See? So once again, going back to that foreshadowing of that remnant, okay, which once again, that Jerusalem here is really referring to that nation, right? Out of the nation of Israel, you're going to have a remnant that is going to escape. Okay, and in this time, that escape is going to be by being delivered and preserved through the Spirit. As it mentions, the zeal of the Lord Yahweh of hosts shall do this, because it's the Lord's determination to do this. But it's through his Spirit that the elect or the remnant are going to be able to escape. Verse 33, and of course, during the time of Hezekiah, that was the Lord showing mercy to those that were left in the land, and they were preserved against the destruction the Assyrians sought to bring upon them. Verse 33, therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning the king of Assyria, He shall not come into the city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shields, nor cast a bank against it. And that bank is when you look into that, I believe it's a siege ramp, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look. Bank, a mound or a rampart for besiegers. So if you look at this, siege rampart. Yeah, so you can see it's basically a way to scale walls. The reason there's a siege is because the city has walls and you can't get into it. So when they build these ramparts, they push it or they get it against the wall, however it's designed, and then they can climb that and get into the city and scale the walls. So the Lord is saying here, they're not gonna harm you, right? They're not gonna make it in here. They're not gonna shoot any arrows against you. Their armies are not gonna be able to invade this land. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into the city, saith the Lord. So this was the message the Lord gave to Isaiah to give to Hezekiah, to say, don't worry, I've heard all these things. Okay, and this is my response. You're gonna be good. Trust and believe he's not gonna lay a finger on any of you. For I will defend this city to save it for mine own sake and for my servant David's sake. Then the angel of the Lord Yahweh went forth and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And that's 185,000. Okay, 80 being 80, and which is a plus 5, so it's 85 and 100, right? So 185,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. So the Lord ended up sending a death angel, right, or an angel with a mission to destroy, and slew 185,000 of the Assyrian troops. And you can imagine, however he did it, right? Whether it was by a disease, a plague, they just died in it, whatever the Lord used. When they woke up, there were 185,000 dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and went and returned and dwelt at Nineveh. So by seeing this in their records, obviously they don't record it as such, right? Because they don't want it to look bad on them. It's like today, right? If the U.S. went and did something, right, something crazy or whatnot, and they say they try to invade a country, they got cooked and they retreated, they wouldn't broadcast that as, oh, we went and got cooked, so we retreated. They would probably say, oh, we accomplished whatever mission we were looking for over there, and so we are falling back for now, and we'll be back if we need to do anything else. That's how they will report it. So similarly, when these guys went back in their records, they're not going to go and say we got cooked because we were proud and we were talking smack. They'll use whatever other means they had to, right? Whatever. So when you look in their records, they're probably not going to have it as the Lord of the God of the Hebrews sent an angel which slew this many of us, and so we ran away. Long story short, they retreat, right? The Assyrians go back. Sennacherib returns to Assyria, as the Lord said. Mind you, this is not something that's happening like within 3 hours, right? This chapter is covering a series of events that took place, over a period of time. It says here, and went and returned and dwelt at Nineveh. And it came to pass, as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch, his god, that Adremelech and Sharezer, his sons, smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia. And Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. And just as the Lord had said, by the mouth of Isaiah in the beginning, that's what would happen to him, right? That he was going to be basically taken out. Forgot where it was that we read that earlier above, but in any case, the Lord said that would happen, and that he would die by the sword. Here it is in verse 7, right? He shall return to his own land and cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. And that's what ended up happening here, right? Which also lines up with secular history about the death of Sennacherib, which you can look up. So that brings us to the end of the book of Isaiah, the 37th chapter, right? Recounting the incident of how the Lord delivered Israel or Judah or Jerusalem from the hands of the Assyrians, in particular Sennacherib. So with that, Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Ruach HaKodesh. Until next time, Shalom.